I'm Heidi Wong, and this is Twisted Tales. Every week, I'll take you deep into humanity's darkest stories and how they influence some of the world's biggest horror movies. Subscribe if you dare and share your own twisted tale below. Today, I'm getting into the shadowy worlds of institutional power and how the hidden cost of generational wealth turned into an over-the-top horror satire. Let's start by talking about a place called Bohemian Grove. It's a 2,700-acre campground in Northern California, and it's one of the most exclusive gatherings in the world. It's basically he-him Coachella. Since the late 1800s, politicians, business leaders, and media executives have met at Bohemian Grove for 2 weeks every summer. We're talking presidents, CEOs, some of the most powerful people on the planet. No press, no outsiders, just the rich and powerful. And historically, no women. What a shock. The Bohemian Grove's location is kept deliberately private. It's surrounded by towering redwood trees, completely cut off from the outside world, because Soho House was not enough. And every year they perform a ritual. It's called the cremation of care. Picture this. A massive 40-foot stone owl statue looms over a clearing in the woods. The owl is supposed to represent wisdom, but if you ask me, it's also extremely ominous. Members dressed in robes gather around while an effigy representing care or worldly worries is burned in a theatrical ceremony completed with music, dramatic lighting, and scripted dialogue. The ritual is meant to symbolize leaving behind worldly concerns and embracing freedom. It's theatrical, almost like a play. Okay, see, I get that, but the giant burning of the statue is a little interesting, you know what I mean? They should be a little bit more self-aware is all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's wrong. Or invite some women in. I feel like that would solve the problem. You know, if we can just go check it out, I really just want to know. Like, I'm just saying that it would fix the problem because I want to know. Unless you're summoning a demon, then I don't want to know. For 2 weeks, these men are supposed to forget about business, politics, and responsibility. They can relax, network, and bond without the pressures of the outside world. I take it back. It's like Burning Man. It's literally Burning Man, but this is like the VVIP Burning Man. It's dramatic and definitely more than a little weird. Now, there isn't any evidence of anything sinister happening at Bohemian Grove, but these over-the-top rituals do show how the ultra-wealthy maintain their influence. Membership is generational, allegedly including people like Clint Eastwood, Richard Nixon, and Ronald Reagan. Fathers pass it down to their sons. If you're not born into the right circles, you're not getting in. And what happens in Bohemian Grove stays in Bohemian Grove. That exclusivity is part of the point. These aren't just social gatherings. They're about maintaining a network of power that spans hundreds of years. The existence of places like the Bohemian Grove reminds us that the ultra-rich operate by different rules. They have access to spaces, rituals, and networks that the rest of us will never get anywhere close to. It's a world built on secrecy, tradition, and exclusion. And when you marry into that world, you're not just joining a family. You're entering an institution with its own codes and expectations. Ones that existed long before you and will continue long after you're gone. Sometimes that pressure can be suffocating. You're expected to conform, to follow traditions that you don't understand, and maintain appearances at all costs. And in the worst cases, they can be deadly. Which brings me to the women who learned this the hard way. Let's start with Hope Cooke. In 1959, Hope was a college freshman from New York City. She came from a regular American family. Nothing royal about her background. She was studying at Sarah Lawrence College when she met a man named Paulden during a summer vacation in India. He was charming, educated, and happened to be the crown prince of Sikkim, a small Himalayan kingdom nestled between India and Tibet. They fell in love, and in 1963, Hope became his wife and the queen consort of Sikkim. Hope thought she was in a whirlwind romance, but instead, she found herself at the center of a geopolitical firestorm. She had to give up her American citizenship to marry Paulden. That was the first sacrifice, leaving behind her country, her identity, and everything she knew. And soon, she realized she was way in over her head as Sikkim faced mounting pressures from India, which wanted to absorb the small kingdom. Hope tried to adapt. She learned the language, studied the culture, and took on her role as queen. But the political situation got worse, and a lot of people blamed her, an American outsider, for encouraging the king's resistance to India. Some even accused her of being a CIA agent. By July of 1973, Hope couldn't take it anymore. She fled to New York with her children, abandoning her husband and her throne. Paulden stayed behind, but the situation was too far gone. In April of 1975, Indian troops stormed the royal palace and placed him under house arrest. Shortly after, Sikkim became India's 22nd state and Paulden was stripped of his crown. Hope officially divorced him in 1980. She later said that marrying into royalty meant entering a world she didn't fully understand until it was too late. The institution consumed her life, and when it collapsed, she was left with nothing. Another woman who knows this well is Masako Owada. Before she became the Empress of Japan in 1993, Masako was a Harvard-educated diplomat with a promising career. She spoke multiple languages, worked for the Japanese Foreign Ministry, and had a bright future ahead of her. And in 1986, she met Crown Prince Naruhito at an official function. Naruhito was immediately taken by Masako's intelligence and confidence, but she turned him down twice. She knew what royal life would demand. The imperial household of Japan is one of the most restrictive royal institutions in the world. Tradition means everything. Being Emperor of Japan is mostly a symbolic role, a lot like the British royal family. Imperial family members participate in hundreds of formal events each year, representing Japan in diplomatic functions and supporting charitable causes. But they can't vote, run for office, or choose their jobs freely. Every aspect of their lives is controlled by the Imperial Household Agency, so it's not hard to see why Masako wasn't interested. But Naruhito didn't give up, and in 1992, Masako finally said yes. Naruhito promised her to, quote, protect you for my entire life. They always say that, and the danger is them. She gave up her career, her independence, and her freedom to become crown princess, and the pressure was immediate. The imperial household expected her to produce a male heir. I hate it. I hate it so much. In Japan's royal system, only men can inherit the throne, so Masako's entire worth became tied to whether she could give birth to a son. In 2001, she did give birth to a daughter. The criticism was relentless from all sides. The media scrutinized her. Palace officials made it clear that she had failed. Masako was crushed. She experienced a severe mental health crisis and was diagnosed with adjustment disorder, which is essentially a breakdown caused by stress. For years, she barely appeared in public. She was isolated, trapped in a gilded cage that she couldn't escape. And she never had a son. The succession issue was only resolved in 2006 when Naruhito's younger brother had a boy. Masako did go on to become Empress in 2019 and still is today, but her experience shows that she wasn't valued as a person, only as a symbol. And then, of course, there's Meghan Markle. Meghan was an American actress. She was independent, confident, and unique for the British royal family in that she was biracial. She seemed like a breath of fresh air. When she married Prince Harry in 2018, the wedding was a global event. It was beautiful, romantic, and historic. But behind the glamour ceremony, Meghan was dealing with relentless hostility from the British media. The tabloids attacked her constantly. They criticized everything from her clothes to her family to her body language. She and Harry tried to make royal life work, but eventually it was too much. In 2020, they withdrew as senior royals and left the UK entirely. They moved to California, stepping away from the institution that made their lives unbearable. Meghan later spoke openly about how damaging the experience was. She struggled with her mental health. She felt trapped and unsupported. These women all learned that marrying into powerful families meant sacrificing parts of themselves, their freedom, their identity, their careers, sometimes even their mental health. The truth is, these institutions don't really care about the individuals who enter them. They care about preserving their brands. If you can't conform, can't produce what's expected of you, or can't maintain the image that they demand, you're expendable. And history is full of darker examples, like the wives of Henry VIII. Henry VIII is one of history's most notorious kings, for good reason. He had 6 wives, and things didn't end well for any of them. In 1509, Henry married Catherine of Aragon, his first wife. She was a Spanish princess, well-educated, and deeply religious. She gave Henry a daughter, Mary, but no surviving sons. You know what that means. No sons means the beginning of the end. So around 1526, Henry became interested in one of Catherine's ladies-in-waiting, Anne Boleyn. Anne was intelligent, charismatic, and ambitious. Henry was obsessed with her. But when Henry asked Anne to become his mistress, she refused. She would only become his wife. That only made Henry want her more, especially when she left court for her family's estate just out of Henry's reach. He wrote passionate, desperate love letters to Anne that survived to this day. The courtship lasted 7 years. That whole time, Henry was trying to get his marriage to Catherine annulled. But he needed permission from the Pope himself, and he wouldn't give it. So Henry did the only logical thing. He broke away from the Catholic Church and founded the Church of England just so he could get a divorce. And he didn't just divorce Catherine, he exiled her. Not only that, but she wasn't allowed to ever see their daughter again. With her out of the picture, Henry and Anne got married and went to work in the bedroom. But when Anne gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, instead of a son, Henry turned on her too. And this time, he didn't bother with divorce. He had Anne arrested on trumped-up charges of adultery, incest, and treason. It was clearly a sham, but it didn't matter. Anne was beheaded in 1536. After that, Jane Seymour was lucky wife number 3. She was quiet, obedient, and finally gave Henry what he wanted, a son, Edward. But the birth was hard on Jane, and she died 12 days later. Anne of Cleves was the next wife up. Henry was sold the moment that he saw her portrait, and when he finally met her in person, the expectation didn't really match reality. As the story goes, Henry called her a Flanders mare, meaning she looked like a plain horse. Their marriage was never consummated. Henry had it annulled within months, but Anne was smart. She didn't complain about it, and in return, Henry gave her a generous settlement and allowed her to live independently in England. She was one of the lucky ones. They got divorced, but at least she made it out alive. Catherine Howard was Henry's 5th wife. She was young, maybe just 16 when she married Henry, who was at this point in his late 40s. To nobody's surprise, this wasn't a happy marriage, and Catherine was accused of adultery. Unlike Anne Boleyn, these charges may have had some truth to them. Either way, the punishment was the same. And extreme, regardless. You think that he was being faithful this whole time? Like, we're talking about adultery like he was... Guys, come on. I'm just saying, it's not like... We all knew what goes on. Just kidding, it was the 1500s. We actually don't know what goes on at all. Catherine was beheaded in 1542. Finally, Catherine Parr was 6. By this point, Henry was old, sick, and basically on his deathbed. Thankfully, Catherine Parr outlived him, but barely. She was almost arrested on charges of heresy before Henry died. If he'd lived even a few months longer, she might have met the same fate as Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. 2 beheaded, 1 dead from childbirth, 2 divorced, and 1 who narrowly escaped. These women didn't marry for love. They married into a dynasty, and the dynasty consumed them. Marriage to Henry wasn't about partnership. It was about producing a male heir and maintaining his bloodline. If a wife couldn't deliver, she was expendable, and the institution supported this. No one said, maybe we shouldn't execute women for failing to meet your expectations, because the institution's survival mattered more than the women themselves. So you can see how this idea of shadowy power players and dangerous traditions would make the perfect subject for a horror movie. And that's exactly what happened with Ready or Not. It's about marriage, wealth, and expectations with a deadly twist. If you haven't seen Ready or Not, here's what you need to know. The main character, Grace, is a woman from a modest background who falls in love with Alex Ladomus, heir to a massive board game empire. Grace grew up in foster care, bouncing between families, never really belonging anywhere. So when Alex proposes, it's not just about love, it's about finally having a family of her own too. The wedding takes place at the Ladomus family estate, a sprawling Gothic mansion that looks like something out of a different century. And Alex's family, they're loaded. We're talking generational wealth, the kind of money that comes with expectations and traditions. And one of those traditions comes on their wedding night. After the ceremony and the reception, the family tells Grace that every new member has to play a game at midnight. It's a part of the family's history, a ritual passed down over the years. Sounds harmless enough, right? The Ladomus family matriarch, Becky, brings out this ornate wooden box covered in strange symbols. Grace has to draw a card that determines which game she'll play. Most of the options are harmless: chess, old maid, checkers, but Grace draws hide and seek. The room goes silent. The family exchanges terrified looks. The rules seem simple enough. Grace hides anywhere in the mansion until dawn. If they don't find her by sunrise, she wins. But once the clock strikes midnight and the hunt begins, Grace realizes this isn't just a game. Her new in-laws are hunting her with crossbows, rifles, and axes. And if they find her before sunrise, they're going to kill her. See, generations ago, the Ladomas family made a pact with a mysterious figure named Mr. Belial. Wealth and power in exchange for blood sacrifice. And they've been honoring that deal ever since. Whenever a new family member joins the family through marriage, they have to draw a card. Most cards are harmless, but if you pick hide and seek, you become the sacrifice. And before I go through the rest of the movie, I want to talk about Mr. Belial for a second. Because here's the thing, the name Belial sounds a lot like Belial. And Belial, yeah, that's a demon. The filmmakers never confirmed whether this was intentional, but the parallels are hard to ignore. If you are the filmmakers, please comment below and tell us what the truth is. Just throwing it out there. Let me break down who Belial actually is. In ancient Hebrew text, Belial started as a concept, not a character. The word meant worthlessness or lawlessness. In the Old Testament, people described as sons of Belial were corrupt and wicked. It was basically calling someone morally bankrupt. But over time, Belial evolved from a concept into an actual entity. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were written by a Jewish sect around the 1st century BCE, Belial appears as a leader of evil forces. He commands the sons of darkness in opposition to God's people. He's not just an idea anymore. He's a supernatural being, a force of corruption and chaos. By the time the early Christians were writing around 55 CE, Belial was being used as another name for Satan. And in occult handbooks from the 1600s, Belial became a ranked demon with specific powers. In a text called the Lesser Key of Solomon, Belial is listed as the 68th spirit out of the 72 demons. He's described as a powerful king who appears in a chariot of fire. According to the book, Belial can give demonic servants to those who summon him. But they're not free. You have to provide a sacrifice. And if it's not good enough, you'll have to deal with the 50 legions of spirits under his command. Another text written in 1577 describes Belial as a king created next after Lucifer himself. He's beautiful in appearance and deeply deceptive. Unless he's held back by divine power, he'll lead his summoners astray. The themes here are clear. Belial grants wealth and power in exchange for offerings, usually souls. He's beautiful and seductive, making deals that seem too good to be true, because they are. The family's fortune didn't come from hard work or innovation. It came from a pact with a demonic force that demands sacrifice to maintain their prosperity. And that's part of what makes Ready or Not so effective. It takes old fears about deals with the devil, fears that have existed for centuries, and transplants them into a modern setting. It's not people gathering at midnight in some medieval village. It's wealthy elites in designer suits hunting a woman through their mansion. But the underlying horror is the same. Power gained through darkness, wealth that demands a price in blood. And that's why the Belial connection matters even if it's never explicitly stated in the film. It taps into something primal and ancient. So when the Ladomas family made their deal with Mr. Belial, they were entering a deadly bargain. And there was no escape. At least not until Grace shows up. In Ready or Not, Grace spends the night running through secret passageways, hiding in dumbwaiters, and crawling through the mansion's maze-like corridors. She's dodging bullets, setting traps, and fighting back against people who were toasting her happiness just hours earlier. The Ladomas mansion itself becomes a kind of trap, and that was intentional. The movie's cinematographers said that every aspect of the house was designed to make Grace feel like she was caught in a labyrinth. The mansion is this sprawling Gothic estate with hidden passages, secret rooms, and corridors that seem to go on forever. It's beautiful on the surface, but also deeply oppressive. Grace thinks that she can hide, but the house itself is working against her. Every room has another door, another passage, another way for the family to track her down. There's no escape. The walls close in. The house is a part of the family's machine just as much as the weapons they're carrying. And then there's Grace's wedding dress. At the start of the night, it's pristine, beautiful, a symbol of her new life and her hope for the future. But as the hunt goes on, the dress gets torn and stained with blood, hers and others. By the end, it's almost unrecognizable, and so is Grace. The dress represents her transformation. She enters the Ladomas family as an innocent bride full of hope and excitement. She believed Alex's family would become her family, that she'd finally belong somewhere. Instead, she's betrayed, hunted, and forced to fight for her life. By the time the sun rises, she's not the same person. She's a survivor who's been through hell, someone who's seen the true face of the institution she thought she was joining. The wedding dress becomes armor, proof that she survived what was meant to kill her. And that's what makes the movie more than just a slasher film. It's about a woman discovering her own strength in the face of an institution designed to destroy her. The Ladomas family underestimated Grace. They saw her as weak, disposable, and an easy sacrifice. But Grace proved them wrong. And that ending, without spoiling too much, is deeply satisfying because it's about Grace taking back her power from people who tried to take everything from her. As one critic put it, the movie belongs to a long tradition of horror where elites exploit and hunt the powerless. It's a theme that goes back decades, and it resonates because there's truth in it. The ultra-wealthy operate in a different world. They have access to resources, spaces, and networks that regular people don't. And sometimes that power comes with a darkness that outsiders can't see until they're already trapped inside. Ready or Not takes a lot of creative liberties, obviously, but strip away the crossbows and demonic pacts, and you're left with something that's actually happened to real people, as we've seen today. So what does Ready or Not really tell us? At its core, the movie is about power, who has it and who doesn't, and what happens when someone from the outside tries to enter a world built to exclude them. The Ladomas family isn't just wealthy, they're a dynasty. The money comes from history, tradition, and secrets passed down through generations. They've built their empire on a foundation of blood and rituals, and they'll do anything to protect it. Grace, an orphan with no family of her own, thought marrying Alex would give her the belonging she always wanted. She thought she was getting love and security, a ready-made family who would accept her. Instead, she got a nightmare. Because in systems built on power and exclusivity, outsiders are expendable. Of course, most people don't face murderous in-laws on their wedding night. But the anxiety in Ready or Not is something women have felt for centuries. The fear that people you trusted don't have your best interests at heart. That the institution cares more about preserving itself than protecting you. That you've entered into something bigger and more powerful than you are, and it will crush you if you don't fit the mold. Ready or Not takes that fear and turns it into a brutal, darkly funny thriller. It's entertaining and satisfying to watch Grace fight back. But it's effective because it's rooted in truth. Throughout history, powerful families have maintained their status through secrecy and control. Through rituals outsiders don't understand and networks that span generations. And the people who marry into those families often pay a price. Their freedom, their identity, their mental health, and in the darkest cases, their lives. Grace survives her wedding night. Sure, she's bloodied and traumatized, but she's alive. And she makes sure that the Ladomas family pays for what they tried to do to her. But the movie leaves you with a haunting question. How many people in real life didn't survive? How many women married into power and wealth only to discover that they'd entered a trap? How many were sacrificed, literally or figuratively, to maintain a dynasty's power? The answer is probably more than we'll ever know. Because these institutions thrive on secrecy, on closed doors and private rituals, on making sure outsiders never see what really happens inside. And once they do, there's no getting out. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of Twisted Tales, a Crime House original. I'd love to hear from you. What did you think about today's story? Anything you're dying for me to cover? Leave a comment or review wherever you're tuning in. And be sure to follow Twisted Tales so we can keep building this community together. I'll be back next week with another unbelievable true story. Until then, stay curious. And remember, there's no reason to fear the dark unless you try to hide from it. If you're brave enough, subscribe now. Just search for @Crime House Studios on YouTube. And remember, reality is the real horror.